They looked at her hoodie and saw a thug. They looked at her skin and saw a trespasser. What they didn't check was her bank account. When billionaire CEO Evelyn Vance tried to board a flight she had legally paid for, a gate agent named Bailey didn't just deny her entry. She humiliated her in front of 200 people. Bailey thought she was protecting the airline's image, but she was actually destroying its future. Evelyn didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just made one phone call that didn't just ground the plane. It liquidated the entire board of directors. This is the story of the most expensive mistake in aviation history. You need to hear this. The sliding glass doors of JFK International Airport, Terminal 4, parted with a hiss of compressed air, letting in a gust of biting November wind. It was 6:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, a time when the world is suspended in a grey, caffeinated purgatory between sleep and the start of the grind. Evelyn Vance adjusted the hood of her oversized charcoal sweatshirt, pulling it slightly further over her forehead. She wasn't hiding exactly. She was just tired. For the last 72 hours, Evelyn hadn't slept more than 4 hours combined. As the CEO and founder of Meridian Holdings, a private equity firm that quietly managed assets larger than the GDP of several small European nations, she had been locked in a conference room in downtown Manhattan, finalizing the acquisition of a lithium mining conglomerate in Nevada. The deal was worth $4.2 billion. The ink was barely dry on the contracts tucked safely into the encrypted cloud server of her phone. Now, all she wanted was to get to London. She had a seat booked on Stratum Air, Flight 902 to Heathrow, Seat 1A, the first-class suite, the one with the sliding privacy door, the lie-flat bed, and the champagne that cost more than a used Honda Civic. She wasn't dressed for a board meeting. She was dressed for comfort. She wore a pair of grey cashmere joggers that, to the untrained eye, looked like gym sweats. On her feet were limited-edition sneakers that retailed for $600 but were currently scuffed from pacing around her office. She carried no purse, only a battered leather rucksack slung over one shoulder and her passport clutching in her hand. She looked like a student, or an artist, or, as the eyes of the airport security staff suggested as she passed them, someone who didn't quite belong in the priority queue. Evelyn was used to the looks. In fact, she banked on them. In the high-stakes world of venture capital, being underestimated was a superpower. When she walked into a room, older white men in bespoke suits usually assumed she was the assistant, or perhaps the diversity hire sent to take notes. By the time they realized she was the shark in the tank, she had already eaten them alive. But today, she didn't have the energy for psychological warfare. She just wanted to sleep. She navigated the chaotic swirl of the departure hall, her noise-cancelling headphones buzzing with white noise to drown out the crying babies and the endless announcements about unattended luggage. She bypassed the serpentine line of economy check-in, which was already winding back toward the entrance doors, and headed toward the hushed, carpeted sanctuary of the first-class check-in area. Stratum Air prided itself on exclusivity. Their branding was sleek, silver, and elitist. Their slogan, "Ascend above the rest," was plastered in gold lettering on the wall behind the counters. There were 3 agents working the first-class desk. 2 were currently occupied with a large family transporting ski equipment. The 3rd station was open. Standing behind it was Bailey Miller. Bailey was a woman who wore her authority like a weapon. She was in her mid-50s, with hair dyed a brittle, aggressive shade of blonde that seemed to defy gravity. Her uniform was impeccable: navy blue blazer, a silk scarf tied in a severe knot, and a gold name tag that gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. She was typing furiously on her keyboard, her lips pursed in a line of permanent dissatisfaction. Evelyn approached the counter. She lowered her headphones to her neck. "Good morning," Evelyn said, her voice raspy from days of talking. She placed her passport on the cool granite countertop. Bailey didn't look up. Her eyes remained glued to her screen, her long, manicured fingernails clicking rhythmically against the keys. Click-clack. Click-clack. It was a deliberate pause, a power move. Evelyn knew it well. She had seen CEOs do it to intimidate junior analysts. Evelyn waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Finally, Bailey stopped typing. She didn't smile. She didn't offer the scripted "Welcome to Stratum Air" greeting. She slowly lifted her head, her eyes scanning Evelyn from the hood of her sweatshirt, down to her scuffed sneakers, and then back up to her face. The look wasn't just dismissive, it was visceral. It was a look that curdled the air between them. "The economy line is back there, sweetie," Bailey said, pointing a manicured finger over Evelyn's shoulder toward the chaos of the main hall. Her tone was sickeningly sweet, dripping with condescension. "You're in the wrong section." Evelyn didn't blink. She didn't move. "I know where I am. I'm on flight 902 to London. First class." Bailey let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound devoid of humor. Flight 902 is fully booked in first, and frankly, even if it wasn't. She trailed off, her eyes doing another judgmental sweep of Evelyn's attire. "This is the priority lane. It's for our premium members and first-class ticket holders. Actual ticket holders." "I am a ticket holder," Evelyn said, keeping her voice level. She pushed her passport slightly forward. "If you could just scan my passport, you'll see my reservation." Bailey sighed, a heavy, dramatic exhale that signaled to everyone nearby that she was dealing with an imbecile. "Look, I don't have time for this. We have actual high-value customers waiting. You need to go to the kiosks in the main hall if you want to check your standby status or whatever budget ticket you bought." "My name is Evelyn Vance," Evelyn said, her patience fraying at the edges. "I bought a full-fare first-class ticket 3 days ago. Scan the passport." Bailey finally picked up the passport. She held it by the corner, as if it were contaminated. She didn't open it. She didn't scan it. She just looked at the cover, then tossed it back onto the counter. It slid across the granite and nearly fell off the edge. "I'm not scanning anything," Bailey snapped, her mask of professional courtesy slipping. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know a first-class passenger when I see one, and I know a scammer when I see one. You're holding up the line." Behind Evelyn, a man in a tailored charcoal suit cleared his throat loudly. He checked his Rolex, a submariner, Evelyn noted absent-mindedly, and tapped his foot. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked, his voice booming. "Some of us have a schedule to keep." Bailey's face instantly transformed. She flashed a bright, obsequious smile at the man behind Evelyn. "I'm so sorry, sir. Just dealing with some confusion. I'll be with you in 1 moment." She turned back to Evelyn, her smile vanishing instantly. "You need to leave. Now, or I'm calling security." Evelyn felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. It wasn't fear. It was rage, but it was a cold, calculated rage, the kind that built empires and destroyed competitors. "Call them," Evelyn said softly. The air in the terminal seemed to grow thinner. The ambient noise of the airport faded into a dull hum as the confrontation at the first-class counter sharpened. Bailey blinked, clearly unprepared for the challenge. Usually, when she exerted her gatekeeper authority, people shrank. They got embarrassed. They mumbled apologies and shuffled away to the economy lines where they belonged. But this woman, this disheveled girl in a hoodie, was standing her ground with a stillness that was unnerving. "Excuse me?" Bailey asked, her voice rising an octave. "I said, call security," Evelyn repeated. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. a sleek, black titanium device that wasn't available on the consumer market. She unlocked it and brought up her Stratum Air app. The screen displayed a QR code with a bold gold banner. First class, seat 1A. Evelyn held the phone up, the screen brightness set to maximum. Here is my boarding pass. Here is my confirmation number, JK5999 Alpha. Now, are you going to do your job, or are we going to continue this performance? Bailey stared at the phone screen. For a split second, doubt flickered in her eyes. But Bailey was a woman who had built her entire self-worth on being right, on being the arbiter of who was worthy and who was not. To admit she was wrong now, in front of the wealthy man in the suit behind Evelyn, was impossible. Her ego wouldn't allow it. Screenshots can be faked, Bailey declared loudly. She looked around, seeking validation from the other passengers. People buy these fake boarding pass apps online all the time. They think they can sneak into the lounge and get free drinks. It's the Live app, Evelyn said, tapping the screen to refresh it. The page reloaded instantly. It's a spoofed app, Bailey practically shouted. She slammed her hand down on the counter. I am not checking you in. You are disrupting the operation of this airline. You are trespassing in a premium zone. The man in the suit behind Evelyn stepped forward. Look, lady, he said to Evelyn, just go to the help desk. You're making us all late. Evelyn turned slowly to face him. He was tall, probably a lawyer or a hedge fund manager. Mid-40s. He had the arrogance of someone who had never been told no in his life. I have a ticket, Evelyn said to him calmly. She is refusing to scan it because she doesn't like how I'm dressed. She's refusing to scan it because you're obviously causing a scene, the man retorted, rolling his eyes. Just move. I'm not moving, Evelyn said, turning back to Bailey. I want to speak to a manager. Bailey let out a scoff. I am the senior gate agent. I am the manager on duty for this zone. Then I want your manager, the station manager, Evelyn demanded. Kyle, Bailey yelled, not using the phone or the radio, but simply shouting down the counterline. A door behind the baggage belt opened, and Kyle Sterling emerged. Kyle was younger than Bailey, perhaps in his late 30s, with a slicked-back haircut and a suit that was slightly too tight around the shoulders. He walked with a strut that suggested he thought he was running the Pentagon, not an airline check-in desk. What is the issue here, Bailey? Kyle asked, adjusting his tie. He didn't look at Evelyn. He looked at Bailey. This passenger is refusing to leave the priority line, Bailey said, playing the victim perfectly. She has no valid credential. She's showing me a fake phone app, and she's being aggressive toward the other first-class guests. Kyle finally turned to Evelyn. He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering on the sneakers and the messy hair. He made the same calculation Bailey had. No money, no status. Problem. Ma'am, Kyle said, his voice dropping to that patronizing de-escalation tone that was anything but calming. I need you to step out of the line. You are blocking our premium passengers. I am a premium passenger, Evelyn said, her voice turning icy. If you would simply take my passport and type in my name, you would see that I am a Diamond Medallion member, and I have paid $12,000 for a seat on this plane. Kyle chuckled. He actually chuckled. Ma'am, Diamond Medallion members don't dress like that. We have a dress code for the first-class lounge, and frankly, you don't meet it. There is no dress code for check-in, Evelyn countered. And I travel in what I want. Are you refusing me service? I am refusing you entry to the first-class zone based on disruptive behavior and suspicion of fraud, Kyle said, crossing his arms. He felt powerful. He had the backing of Bailey, the support of the angry line of passengers, and the visual evidence that this woman was nobody. Suspicion of fraud, Evelyn repeated slowly. That is a serious accusation, Kyle. It's a factual observation, Kyle smirked. Now Bailey called security. They're on their way. You can leave on your own, or you can leave in handcuffs. Your choice. Evelyn looked at Kyle. She looked at Bailey, who was now checking in the man in the suit, ignoring Evelyn completely, as if she had ceased to exist. The man in the suit shot Evelyn a smug look as he handed over his bags. Finally, the man muttered, "Get the trash out of here." The comment hung in the air. Trash. Something inside Evelyn shifted. For years, she had played by the rules. She had worked twice as hard to get half as far. She had built Meridian Holdings from a laptop in a coffee shop into a global financial empire. She sat on the boards of charities. She funded schools. And here, in this sterile, well-lit airport terminal, she was being reduced to trash because she dared to wear a hoodie while black. She realized that simply showing them the ticket wasn't going to be enough. Even if they scanned it now, the humiliation was done. The damage was done. They didn't respect her as a customer. They didn't respect her as a human being. They respected power. Only power. And she was about to show them what real power looked like. "Okay," Evelyn said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "I'll wait for security." She took a step back, leaning against a structural pillar near the counter, and crossed her arms. She watched as 2 Port Authority police officers came jogging down the terminal corridor, their radios crackling. Bailey pointed a long red fingernail at Evelyn. "That's her. She's harassing customers and refusing to vacate." The officers approached. One was older, tired-looking. The other was young and eager. "Mom, you need to come with us," the older officer said. "I haven't done anything wrong," Evelyn said. "I have a ticket. They refused to scan it." "We can sort that out at the precinct or the help desk," the officer said, his hand hovering near her arm. "But you can't stay here. The airline has requested your removal." "The airline," Evelyn said, looking directly at Kyle, "is making a mistake." "Get her out of here," Kyle said, waving his hand dismissively, "and ban her from the flight. I'm marking her record as do not board." "You're banning me?" Evelyn asked. "For life," Kyle said. "Stratum Air doesn't need customers like you." Evelyn nodded. A small, sad smile touched her lips. "Okay, Kyle. You win. I'm leaving." She allowed the officers to escort her away from the first-class counter. She could feel the eyes of the entire terminal on her. The whispers. "Must be on drugs. Probably stole that credit card. Why do they always cause trouble?" She walked with her head high, despite the burning shame that tried to claw its way up her throat. The officers walked her to the exit of the terminal, past the security checkpoints, back out to the curbside drop-off. "Don't come back inside today, Mom," the officer warned, "or we'll have to arrest you for trespassing." "Don't worry," Evelyn said, pulling her phone out again. The wind whipped her hair across her face. "I'm not coming back inside, not to fly Stratum anyway." She stood on the sidewalk, the fumes of buses and taxis filling her nose. She looked at her phone. It was 7:10 a.m. The markets would be opening soon. She scrolled through her contacts. She didn't call customer service. She didn't call a lawyer. She scrolled past her assistants, past her VP of operations. She stopped at a name listed simply as Arthur Blackrock. But then she hesitated. No, that was too slow. She needed something immediate. She needed someone who could stop a plane on the runway. She scrolled down to Victor Sterling. No relation to Kyle Sterling, the manager inside. Victor Sterling was the chairman of the board for Stratum Air. He was also an old acquaintance from the Davos summit 3 years ago. Evelyn had saved him from a disastrous investment in Turkish cryptocurrency. He owed her. But more importantly, Evelyn's firm, Meridian, held a significant number of short positions in various transportation sectors. She knew Stratum Air's financials better than Victor did. She knew they were leveraging debt to pay for their new fleet of Dreamliners. She knew their liquidity was tight. And she knew that Meridian Holdings had just acquired Titan Logistics, a company that handled the fuel contracts for Stratum Air at JFK, Heathrow, and LAX. Evelyn dialed a different number. She called her chief financial officer, Marcus Thorne. "Evelyn," Marcus answered on the first ring. "I thought you were in the air. Everything okay?" "Marcus," Evelyn said, her voice steady, cold and sharp as a diamond cutter. "I need you to execute a Clause 4 immediate suspension on the fuel credit line for Stratum Air." There was a silence on the other end. "Stratum Air?" "The commercial carrier. Evelyn, that will ground their entire fleet on the East Coast. They rely on our credit for daily refueling. It's a nuclear option." "I want it done," Evelyn said. "And Marcus?" "Yes?" "Get the legal team to draft a purchase offer for the outstanding distressed debt of Stratum's ground operations subsidiary. I want to own the very ground their gate agents stand on." "Evelyn, what happened?" Marcus asked, sensing the dangerous tone in her voice. "They told me I didn't belong in first class," Evelyn said, watching a Stratum airplane take off in the distance. "So I'm going to buy the airline." While the ecosystem of Terminal 4 continued to thrum with the chaotic energy of thousands of travelers, Evelyn Vance sat in the back of a black Escalade provided by the private aviation terminal, located just 2 miles south of the main commercial hub. The silence in the car was absolute. She wasn't looking at her phone anymore. She was looking out the tinted window at the Stratum Air tail fins lining the tarmac in the distance. They stood like proud, silver dominoes. And she had just flicked the first one. "We'll have you at the Gulf Stream in 5 minutes, Miss Vance," the driver said, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror with profound respect. "Captain Halloway has the engines running. He said something about London." "Yes," Evelyn replied softly. "London. But I'm not in a rush to take off just yet. I want to watch something." "Watch what, ma'am?" "The show," she whispered. "So 7:45 a.m., Terminal 4, Gate B22 Flight 902 to London. Heathrow was supposed to begin boarding in 15 minutes. The first-class passengers were already hovering near the podium, forming that unspoken, aggressive queue of people who desperately needed to be the first to sit down. Bailey Miller was feeling triumphant. She had successfully defended her territory. She had removed the undesirable element. She had protected the sanctity of Stratum Air's premium experience. She high-fived Kyle as he walked past the desk. "Did you see her face?" Bailey laughed, organizing the boarding passes. "Thought she could bully us with a Photoshop app. The nerve of these people." "I put a flag on her name in the global system," Kyle said, sipping a latte he'd just bought. "She won't be flying Stratum from New York, London, or Tokyo. She's blacklisted. Abusive conduct towards staff. That sticks forever." "Good," Bailey said. "Now let's get these high rollers on board. Mr. Kensington is getting impatient." Mr. Kensington, the man in the suit who had called Evelyn trash, was tapping his foot again. "Are we boarding or what? I have a dinner reservation at the Shard." "Just a few minutes, Mr. Kensington," Bailey cooed. "We're just waiting for the final ready from the captain." On the tarmac, inside the cockpit of the massive Boeing 787 Dreamliner, Captain Mark Stevenson was flipping switches with increasing annoyance. He pressed the radio button on the yoke. "Ops, this is Stratum 902. We are still waiting on the fuel truck. We're sitting at 15% reserves. I can't board passengers until we have the load confirmed. What is the hold-up?" The radio crackled. "Stratum 902, this is Ops. Yeah, we see the ticket. The truck from Titan Logistics is sitting right there, about 50 yards out. They aren't moving." "Well, tell them to move," Captain Stevenson snapped. "We have a slot time. If we miss it, we're stuck on the tarmac for an hour. Stand by. 9:02. Down on the wet concrete of the apron, the massive yellow fuel truck sat idling. The driver, a man named Sal, was staring at the tablet mounted on his dashboard. A giant red banner was flashing across the screen. Authorization revoked. Account suspended. Do not dispense. Sal picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Truck 44. I'm at the Stratum Bird. System is locking me out. Says credit hold. Is this a glitch?" "Checking, Sal." The dispatcher's voice came back, sounding confused. "Whoa. Okay. That's not a glitch. It's a corporate kill switch. It came from the top, like way up top. The message says, Meridian Directive. Do not give them a single drop. Roll back to the depot." "Copy that," Sal said. He put the truck in reverse. The harsh beep, beep, beep of the reversing truck echoed up to the cockpit window. Captain Stevenson watched in horror as the fuel truck backed away and turned around, driving away from his plane. "Ops!" Stevenson yelled into the radio. "The fuel truck is leaving. They're leaving." "Captain, we're getting reports." "It's not just you," Ops replied, panic leaking into their voice. "The trucks are pulling away from Flight 404 to Paris, Flight 88 to Dubai, and the inbound from LAX. Titan Logistics has ceased all operations for Stratum Air, effective immediately." "What does that mean?" Stevenson demanded. "It means, Captain, that unless you can glide to London, you aren't going anywhere." 8:15. The gate. 30 minutes had passed. The boarding time had come and gone. The mood at gate B22 had shifted from impatient to hostile. "Why aren't we boarding?" Mr. Kensington demanded, leaning over the counter so far his tie dangled onto Bailey's keyboard. "The plane is right there." I don't know, sir," Bailey stammered. Her confident facade was cracking. The phone at the podium had been ringing non-stop, but nobody was answering on the other end. "The crew hasn't given us the clear." Kyle came running down the jet bridge, sweating. His arrogant strut was gone, replaced by a frantic shuffle. He burst through the door behind the podium. "What's going on?" Bailey hissed. "These people are going to eat me alive." "There's no fuel," Kyle whispered, his face pale. "The fueling company cut us off. The captain says they just drove away. They're refusing to service the fleet." "Refusing? They can't do that." "We have a contract," Bailey said. "Apparently we breached it, or something. I don't know. But the captain says we have to deplane the crew and cancel the flight. The plane is dead weight." "Cancel?" Bailey shrieked. "Do you know who is on this flight? We have 2 senators and a VP from Goldman Sachs." "I don't have a choice," Kyle yelled back. He grabbed the microphone. The feedback squeal made the 200 passengers wince. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kyle announced, his voice trembling. "We regret to inform you that Flight 902 to London is cancelled." A collective gasp went through the crowd, followed immediately by a roar of anger. "Cancelled due to operational difficulties regarding fuel supply. Please proceed to the customer service desk for rebooking." "This is unacceptable," Mr. Kensington roared. "I paid $12,000. I demand to speak to the station manager." "I am the station manager," Kyle shouted back, losing his cool. "And I can't make jet fuel appear out of thin air, sir." The crowd surged forward. Bailey took a step back, genuine fear in her eyes. This wasn't just a delay. This was a riot in the making. 3,000 miles away, in a glass-walled skyscraper in downtown Chicago, the atmosphere was even colder than the tarmac at JFK. This was the global headquarters of Stratum Air. In the executive boardroom on the 45th floor, the morning strategy meeting had just been interrupted. Victor Sterling, the chairman and CEO of Stratum Air, sat at the head of the mahogany table. He was a silver-haired patrician of the airline industry, a man who played golf with presidents and had weathered strikes, recessions, and crashes. But he had never seen his chief financial officer, Davis Hayes, look like this. Davis burst into the room without knocking. He held a tablet in one hand and a phone in the other. "Victor, we have a code black," Davis said, breathless. The board members turned. "Code black? Is it a crash?" Victor asked, standing up immediately. "Worse. Financial decapitation," Davis said, throwing the tablet onto the table. It showed a live map of Stratum's global operations. Red dots were popping up everywhere. JFK, Newark, Boston, Dulles. Titan Logistics just pulled the plug. They've invoked an immediate credit freeze and suspended all fueling services for Stratum Air worldwide. Our East Coast fleet is grounded. West Coast goes down in 3 hours. Titan? Victor frowned. We've been with them for a decade. We just renegotiated the contract last month. Call their CEO. Tell him I'll fire him. "You can't," Davis said, shaking his head. "Titan was acquired 3 days ago. The deal closed this morning. They have a new parent company." "Who?" "Meridian Holdings," Davis said. The room went silent. Everyone knew Meridian. Meridian was the grim reaper of the corporate world. They didn't just buy companies, they swallowed them. And the woman who ran Meridian was a legend. "Evelyn Vance," Victor said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. "Why is Evelyn Vance freezing our fuel? We're not a distressed asset. We're profitable." "I got her CFO, Marcus Thorne, on the line for 30 seconds before he hung up," Davis said. "He said the suspension is due to material breach of trust and hostile actions against Meridian leadership." He cited Clause 4, Paragraph 2. "The supplier reserves the right to terminate service immediately if the client engages in conduct damaging to the supplier's reputation or safety." "What the hell does that mean?" Victor demanded. "Did we crash a plane into one of their refineries?" "No," Davis said. He pulled up an email on his phone. "I had our ops team at JFK pull the security logs because Thorne mentioned an incident at Terminal 4 this morning. Victor, you need to see this." Davis cast his phone screen to the giant monitor on the wall. It was security footage from the first-class check-in desk at JFK, time-stamped 6:50 a.m. The board watched in silence. They saw a woman in a hoodie standing calmly at the counter. They saw Bailey Miller pointing a finger in her face. They saw Kyle Sterling, Victor's own nephew, whom he had reluctantly given the management job, come out and sneer at the woman. They saw the police escort her away. "Who is the woman?" Victor asked, squinting at the screen. "She looks like a teenager." "Zoom in on the face," Davis instructed the tech assistant. The image grainy but clear enough. The sharp cheekbones, the intense, intelligent eyes. Victor Sterling felt his knees give way. He slumped back into his chair. "Oh my God. That's Evelyn Vance," Davis said quietly. "She was trying to fly first class to London on our airline. And your nephew had her arrested for trespassing." A gasp went around the table. "My nephew," Victor whispered, his face turning purple, "kicked the owner of our fuel supply out of the airport?" "He marked her record as do not board, fraud risk," Davis read from the report. "He called the police on one of the richest black women in America because he didn't like her hoodie." "How much is this costing us?" Victor asked, his voice trembling. "We're losing about $3 million an hour in cancellations," Davis calculated. "But that's not the problem. The problem is the stock. News of the grounding just hit Bloomberg. The stock is down 12% in 10 minutes. If we don't get fuel in the next hour, the liquidity crunch will trigger a default on our aircraft leases. We could be bankrupt by sunset, Victor." Victor stared at the screen, at the frozen image of Evelyn Vance being led away by police. He remembered her from Davos. She was brilliant, ruthless, and fair. But she had a reputation. She never started a fight, but she always finished it. "Get her on the phone," Victor barked. "Now." "We tried," Davis said. "Her assistant says she is unavailable. She's traveling." "Where is she?" "She's currently at 40,000 feet. Davis checked his data. "On her private Gulf Stream, flying to London, the same route she was supposed to take with us." "Connect me to her plane," Victor ordered. "Use the emergency satellite channel. I don't care if you have to route it through the White House. Get Evelyn Vance on the phone." Evelyn sat in the cream-colored leather swivel chair of her Gulfstream G650. The cabin was silent, save for the gentle hum of the Rolls-Royce engines. She had changed out of the hoodie into a silk robe. A flight attendant placed a crystal flute of vintage Dom Perignon on the side table, along with a plate of warm, fresh pastries. This was real luxury, not the performative luxury of Stratum Air's first class, with its plastic smiles and judging eyes. This was the luxury of absolute freedom. Her phone, connected to the plane's Wi-Fi, buzzed. It was Marcus. "Victor Sterling is calling the emergency line," Marcus said. "He sounds like he's having a coronary." "Let him ring a bit longer," Evelyn said, taking a sip of champagne. She looked out the window at the Atlantic Ocean below. She imagined the chaos back at JFK. She felt a twinge of sympathy for the innocent passengers, but she reminded herself, change requires disruption. If she let this slide, Bailey would do it to the next young black girl. Kyle would do it to the next person who didn't look rich enough. "He says he's prepared to offer a formal apology," Marcus added. "Not enough," Evelyn said. "Put him through." A moment later, the cabin speakers chirped, and Victor Sterling's voice filled the air. It was shaky, stripped of all its usual corporate bravado. "Evelyn? Ms. Vance? Can you hear me?" "Hello, Victor," Evelyn said calmly. "I assume you're calling to explain why your staff had me detained by the police this morning?" "Evelyn, please," Victor stammered. "It was a terrible misunderstanding. A catastrophic failure of judgment by junior staff. I had no idea it was you." "That's the problem, Victor," Evelyn said, her voice hardening. "If you knew it was me, I would be sipping champagne in seat 1A right now. But because your staff thought I was nobody, they treated me like garbage. They didn't just deny me service, they tried to humiliate me. They profiled me. They called me a fraud. They are fired," Victor promised immediately. "Kyle, Bailey, they're gone. I'll fire them right now. Just please, Evelyn, reinstate the fuel contract. We have planes stranded all over the East Coast. We're bleeding millions. You're killing the airline." "I'm not killing it, Victor. I'm just holding it accountable," Evelyn replied. "You hired Kyle. You built the culture that allowed Bailey to think she was the gatekeeper of dignity. You allowed a culture where appearance matters more than the customer." "I will change it," Victor begged. "I will implement sensitivity training. I will change the dress codes. Anything." "I don't want training, Victor. I want structural change." Evelyn set her glass down. "Here are my terms, and they are non-negotiable." "Name them," Victor said. "First," Evelyn listed, "Kyle Sterling and Bailey Miller are to be terminated immediately. Not laid off, not retired. Fired for cause. Publicly. Done. Second, Stratum Air will issue a press release within the hour detailing exactly why the fleet is grounded. You will admit that you profiled a passenger and that this is the consequence. You will own the racism. You will not spin it as a technical glitch." Victor hesitated. That would destroy their brand image. "Evelyn, that will tank the stock." "The stock is already tanking, Victor," she reminded him. "Do you want a low stock price, or do you want a bankrupt company?" "Fine. Victor whispered. Fine. We'll issue the statement. Third, Evelyn continued, the passengers on Flight 902, the ones who watched me get dragged away. You will refund their tickets in full, and you will give every single one of them a voucher for future travel, and you will tell them it's a gift from Evelyn Vance. Okay. Yes. We can do that. And finally, Evelyn said, leaning back, I want a seat on the board. Silence stretched across the satellite link. Excuse me? Victor asked. You heard me. I own your fuel. I'm buying your debt as we speak. I want a seat on the board of directors of Stratum Air. I'm going to personally oversee the overhaul of your customer service policies. I'm going to make sure that no one, no matter how they dress or what color their skin is ever treated the way I was treated today. Evelyn, that's a hostile takeover. It's a rescue operation, Victor, she corrected him. You clearly don't know how to run a hospitality business. I do. So, do we have a deal? Or should I tell my pilot to turn around and fly over the graveyard of your airline? Victor Sterling looked around his boardroom. His directors were looking at him with terror. The red lights on the operations map were multiplying. He had no leverage. He had no fuel. He had no choice. We have a deal, Victor said, his voice defeated. Good, Evelyn said. Turn the fuel back on, Marcus. She tapped her phone, ending the call. She looked out the window. The sky was a brilliant, endless blue. She picked up her champagne again. But the story wasn't over. Because while the fuel was flowing again, the karma was just getting started for Bailey and Kyle. They were still at the airport, surrounded by an angry mob, completely unaware that the axe wasn't just falling. It had already severed their heads. 10 a.m., JFK Terminal 4, Gate B22. The atmosphere at Gate B22 had devolved from a waiting area into a gladiatorial arena. 200 angry passengers were surrounding the podium. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and aggression. Bailey Miller was no longer the imperious guardian of the first-class realm. She was sweating through her navy blazer. Her perfectly sprayed hair was starting to droop. She held the phone receiver to her ear, desperate for a voice on the other end. But the line was dead. Kyle Sterling was trying to hide behind a computer monitor. The "do you know who I am" energy he had radiated earlier had evaporated, replaced by the terrifying realization that he had no answers for these people. This is kidnapping, Mr. Kensington shouted, his face a mottled red. You are holding us hostage. I will sue this airline into the ground. Sir, please, Bailey pleaded, her voice cracking. We are waiting for updates. The system says, fuel hold. Suddenly, the massive windows overlooking the tarmac darkened as a shadow passed over them. The passengers turned. Outside, the yellow Titan Logistics fuel truck, the one that had driven away hours ago, was rolling back towards the plane. A cheer went up from the crowd. Finally! Someone yelled. Bailey let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for 3 hours. Oh, thank God, she whispered to Kyle. They're fueling. It must have been a glitch. See? I told you. We just need to board them now, and this nightmare will be over. Kyle straightened his tie, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. Right, okay. I'll make an announcement. We'll blame the vendor. We'll say it was a Titan logistics error. He grabbed the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice boomed, silencing the crowd. As you can see, the fuel trucks have returned. It appears the third-party vendor had a technical error. We will begin boarding shortly. We apologize for the delay caused by their incompetence. He clicked the mic off and smirked at Bailey. Crisis averted. The phone on the desk rang, not the internal line, but the direct priority line from corporate. Kyle picked it up, expecting praise for handling the riot. Station Manager Sterling speaking. Sterling. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. It wasn't his Uncle Victor. It was the head of human resources for Stratum Air. "You are on speaker. I have the Port Authority police on the line as well." Kyle frowned. "HR, look, we're busy boarding. Can this wait?" "No, it cannot wait," the HR director said. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Kyle Sterling, you are hereby relieved of your duties effective immediately. You are to place your badge on the counter and step away from the secure zone." Kyle froze. The blood drained from his face. "What? You can't. I'm the station manager. My uncle is the CEO. Your uncle is the one who authorized this call," the director said coldly. "You and Bailey Miller are terminated for gross misconduct, discriminatory profiling, and causing material financial damage to the company. Do not touch the computer. Do not speak to the passengers. Security is walking up behind you now." Kyle looked up. The same 2 police officers who had escorted Evelyn away earlier were now standing there. But this time, they weren't smiling. "Bailey Miller?" one of the officers asked. Bailey looked up from her screen, her eyes wide with confusion. "Yes?" "Hand over your badge and your airport ID. You need to come with us." "Me?" Bailey shrieked. "I didn't do anything. I was following protocol. That woman was a thug." "That woman!" The HR director's voice boomed through the phone speaker, which Kyle had accidentally left on, "was Evelyn Vance, the owner of the company that fuels our planes. And because of your protocol, she just bought a seat on our board of directors." The silence that fell over the gate area was absolute. Even the angry mob stopped shouting. Mr. Kensington, standing at the front of the line, dropped his briefcase. "Evelyn Vance?" Kensington whispered. "The billionaire." He looked at Bailey with a mixture of horror and disgust. He realized he had called a billionaire trash in front of witnesses. He slowly backed away, trying to disappear into the crowd. "I don't care who she is," Bailey yelled, losing control. "She was wearing a hoodie. She didn't look like first class. I was protecting the brand." "You destroyed the brand," the officer said, reaching over the counter and taking her ID card. "Let's go, Mom. Don't make a scene." The irony was palpable. Bailey was now being escorted out in front of the very people she had tried to impress. As Kyle and Bailey were marched out from behind the podium, the crowd didn't look away. They watched. Some of them took out their phones and started recording. "Hey!" Kyle shouted at a teenager filming him. "Put that away! You can't film me!" "World star!" someone shouted from the back. Kyle Sterling, the man who thought his last name made him untouchable, was led away in disgrace. He passed the first-class lounge he was no longer allowed to enter. He passed the priority lane he had lorded over. As they reached the exit, the large digital departure board flickered and refreshed. Flight 902. London. Boarding message from Stratum Air. "We apologize for the delay. All passengers have been upgraded to gold status. Drinks are compliments of Meridian Holdings." A cheer erupted from the gate. It wasn't for Kyle. It wasn't for Bailey. It was for the woman they had tried to erase. 3 months later, the boardroom of Stratum Air had a breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline, but nobody was looking out the window. All eyes were on the seat at the far end of the table. Victor Sterling looked older. The stress of the last quarter had added deep lines to his face. He cleared his throat. "I would like to call this meeting to order," Victor said. "First item on the agenda, the quarterly customer experience report." "I'll take that," a voice said. Evelyn Vance swiveled her chair around. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She was wearing a cream-colored power suit that cost more than the average American car. She looked radiant, sharp, and undeniably in charge. "Thank you, Victor," Evelyn said. She tapped the tablet in front of her. "Since we implemented the Vance protocol for customer interactions, complaints regarding staff conduct have dropped by 40%. On-time departures are up 15%, because we are no longer wasting time judging people based on their shoes. The board members nodded in agreement. Nobody dared to disagree with her. Since Evelyn had joined the board, Stratum's stock had rebounded and hit an all-time high. She had forced them to modernize, to diversify, and to treat their passengers like human beings rather than cattle. What about the personnel issues? One director asked cautiously. Handled, Evelyn said. She swiped a finger across her tablet, sending a file to the main screen. It was a report on the lawsuit filed by Kyle Sterling for wrongful termination. Kyle tried to sue us, Evelyn said, a dry smile touching her lips. My legal team countersued for damages to the brand's reputation. We settled out of court. Kyle agreed to drop his suit in exchange for us not bankrupting him. I believe he is currently working as a night manager at a rental car kiosk in New Jersey. There were a few chuckles around the table. And Ms. Miller? Victor asked. Bailey, Evelyn said, her expression turning serious. Bailey struggled to find employment in the aviation sector. It seems being viral on YouTube for profiling a billionaire is a red flag for hiring managers. Evelyn paused, looking at the faces around the table. However, Evelyn continued, I don't believe in destroying lives just for sport. I believe in education. I reached out to Bailey last week. Victor blinked. You did? I did. I offered her a job, Evelyn said. The room gasped. A job? Victor asked, incredulous. Here? No, not here, Evelyn said. I offered her a position at Meridian's Community Outreach Center in the Bronx. It's an entry-level position. She helps process intake forms for underprivileged families seeking legal aid. She has to look people in the eye, people who look just like me in that hoodie, and she has to help them. Every single day. Did she take it? She had no choice, Evelyn said. It was the only offer she had. But the report from her supervisor says she's learning. She's humbled. She's starting to understand that dignity isn't something you wear. It's something you give. Evelyn stood up. She walked over to the window and looked down at the city below. She thought about that morning at JFK. The cold wind, the humiliation, the feeling of being invisible. She had turned that invisibility into a weapon, and that weapon into a shield for others. We aren't just flying planes, gentlemen, Evelyn said, turning back to the room of powerful men who now answered to her. We are connecting people, and from now on this airline, everyone gets to fly, no matter who they are. She picked up her rucksack, the same battered leather one she had carried that day, and slung it over her shoulder. Meeting adjourned, Evelyn Vance said. She walked out of the boardroom, and this time nobody asked her where she was going. They just watched her ascend. Evelyn Vance proved that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to make one phone call. Bailey and Kyle learned the hard way that when you judge a book by its cover, you might just get crushed by the library. Evelyn didn't just get revenge. She revolutionized the entire system, proving that the best way to get back at your haters is to become their boss. If you enjoyed this story of billionaire justice and instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. What would you have done if you were Evelyn? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.